Okay, everyone, why don't we go ahead and get started. So hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Armando Ortega, and I'm the Director of Product Marketing at Replicon. And I'd like to thank everyone today for joining us to join us for this webinar entitled Meet the Compliance Technology Experts. It's a live demo and Q&A. Today I'm joined by my colleague Scott Bales, who is the Director of Solutions Engineering at Replicon. And in today's webinar, we'll be discussing the topic of compliance for time and attendance and for absence management. We're going to look at some of the challenges that companies face and how a time and attendance solution like Replicon can help you mitigate the risks of noncompliance, but at the same time helping you to increase the productivity of your employees. The format of today's webinar will feature a quick 30-minute format, which will allow you to very quickly get a glimpse into our product and allow you to also get on with your day. So Scott will spend most of the time of the webinar actually giving a product demonstration. But before that, I'd like to take just a couple minutes to give you a brief overview of Replicon. However, just before I do that, let me give you a few housekeeping items that will help you participate in today's webinar. During the webinar, you'll be kept on mute. But you can submit your questions at any time during the presentation using the Q&A text box that's located at the right hand of the screen there. Questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. So please feel free to submit your questions as we go. So without further ado, why don't we go ahead and get started with the presentation. So let me start off by giving you a little bit of overview of information about Replicon. We're the leader in cloud time tracking applications. You can see here the high number of customers that we have, the diversity of users, and we're basically used by millions of users around the world to help manage their workforce attendance, projects, professional services organizations, shared services, so a lot of different use cases. We'll be focusing a lot today on the time and attendance part of our solution. And here's just a brief snapshot at some of the customers that we have. Highlighting here the diversity of customers. We have customers who are very large and well-known brand names, as well as a lot of smaller organizations that also can take advantage of an enterprise-grade solution to help improve and run their small business. And as I mentioned, we'll be talking about how our product specifically maps to some of the compliance challenges that organizations are facing. And you know, as an organization, you are well aware that there are a lot of challenges and a lot of different forms that you need to comply with. The most probably prominent is FLSA, but there are a lot of other regulations from either labor union contracts or the new Affordable Care Act and other areas of the organization. And the challenges that organizations face is tough because a lot of organizations are actually facing more noncompliance than they think. According to the Department of Labor, they think that about 7 in 10 companies are not compliant, for instance, just with wage and hour labor laws. And noncompliance can come at a pretty hefty price tag, and the cost can be high. Up to $2.7 billion in total was paid by all companies in the last 6 years, and then the average settlement to resolve these was $4.8 million. Of course, this varies a lot by the size of the company. This is probably skewing towards larger companies. But it kind of sends a message to the level of severity and the price that organizations pay if they're not compliant. And then I mentioned we'd also be talking about attendance, time and absence management. And here I'd just like to highlight that as employees in an organization, that typically is one of the highest costs to an organization. And a big percentage of that cost of payroll is associated with absences of employees, whether it's actually them not being there present or also indirect costs such as scheduling conflicts or loss of productivity. So being able to manage that absence is important to be able to be more productive and to also stay compliant with the regulations that pertain to absence management. And so that's one of the reasons that a lot of companies have turned to our time tracking, time and attendance solution. So these are some of the key benefits that many of our customers have shared with us. I'll start with the middle one, which is the focus of this topic, is lowering compliance risk. And in the demo today, Scott's going to highlight a lot of the capabilities that we have to help mitigate these risks in our solution. So, but in addition to the compliance, by using our time and attendance solution, organizations also just have greater insight into their employee labor costs. How are employees using their time? Where are they using them? And they can take this information to make better decisions about how to take the most advantage of their employee population. And then the third item here pertains to optimizing the process, which basically just speaks to the fact that as you, especially if you're on a manual system or you're using a third-party vendor that's not efficient or not well integrated with other systems in your organization, a Replicon solution can help automate the process of collecting time, make it faster, make it easier, and eliminate inefficiencies. So with that, at this point, what I'd like to do is go ahead and turn it over to Scott Bales so that he can actually go and show you the application. So Scott, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Armando. And I'm sharing my screen now. Are you able to see that?
Yes, I can see that well. Thanks, Scott.
Great. Okay. Well, as Armando mentioned, compliance is not a new issue to anybody on this call. As long as we've had payroll, we've had compliance issues, and technology has always looked to help streamline that and help address any issues that come up as a result. The system that we're going to take a look at today is Replicon's Time Attend system, and what I'm going to do is focus on some key elements that help address or help us deal with compliance specifically. And at the same time, I'm also going to cover off a couple of those other points. So where I'm at now is I've logged in as that end user, okay? And when we talk about compliance, one of the most important components of compliance is adoption. Without a system that end users are willing to adopt and use on a regular basis, you're going to be faced with a non-compliant situation regardless of what system you implement. So Replicon recognized that very early in our history, and we've spent a lot of research and development dollars on the end user experience and the flexibility of that end user experience to allow for time capture and time off capture, we'll see in a moment, to be as efficient as possible. Okay, that efficiency and that positive end user interaction really helps drive adoption, and at the end of the day helps with that bottom line compliance. So the timesheet I'm looking at here is a representation of one of several formats. It's a standard timesheet, so we're not capturing specific details about the time of day, but only bulk hours towards different activities. And those can be set up and configured and manipulated. Same with the week here. And from a flexibility perspective, you want a solution, I'm going to move forward again to the next week, you want a solution that can be reconfigured. Here, we see a totally different format of timesheet where I'm capturing start and stop times. And this information and this capability is inherent in the Replicon solution. You are going to have different groups of users within your organization. Some will be tracking time in one way, some will be tracking time in another, and you don't want to force them all into the same solution, if you will. You want to provide the optimal experience for them as a group, and the Replicon system will help with that. Now, part of the compliance conundrum, if you will, that comes up and it challenges payroll organizations is overtime calculations. Here we can see the system is actually automatically calculating the overtime based on the entries that have been logged on the timesheet. So there's no need to go in and either A, have a user determine what's overtime and what's not, because we know they will tend to err on the side of additional overtime, or go in as a payroll admin and have to calculate that on a regular basis. Replicon is going to keep you up to date with all of the latest labor policies so that you can easily adjust them, effective date those changes so that they are not retroactive and they only apply going forward, and keep you in compliance from an overtime and labor standards perspective. Now, time capture is only one piece of the puzzle when we talk about the end user experience. That end user experience also extends to time off. So if I open up my time off tab at the top, and again, an end user would only have these two tabs in most cases, the time off tab gives me a very intuitive interface to actually track my time off, log my time off requests, submit them to submit them to my supervisor. And when we talk specifically about compliance, what we want to do is, A, have a way of tracking this information electronically so that we can report on it, and that's what Replicon is. You would not believe the organizations out there that are still relying on a manual process. Secondly, we want to have the ability for a user to know what their balances are. So as a user, I can see what I have available. We can also get the system to enforce those balances so that I can't take more than I'm entitled to and run into a situation where I'm in the negative at the end of the year. So the system will help enforce compliance there. Now, without that level of information, what you're going to run into is employees that are taking more than they're allocated. You're going to run into situations where that leads to liability concerns because your employees will have taken maybe 2 weeks of paid time off, and then you have no proof of that, so you're entitled to pay them out at the end of the year. But what the Replicon system allows them to do is very quickly click and drag across days to book their time off, getting real-time balance information, and submitting that through for approval. So from an audit trail perspective, we have that recorded date timestamp of when the user's taking time off. And of course, if you're leveraging our time and attendance solution, this time off flows back to the timesheet as well. So there's no worry about them forgetting to put it on their timesheet and maybe having payroll need to be adjusted as a result. Now, compliance from an end user perspective is really based on those elements we've looked at. We've looked at the timesheet and a great user experience there, automatically calculating overtime and communicating them back to the user. And then from a time off perspective, we're limiting them to the time off they're able to take. We're forcing them to comply to the policies that we set up within the organization and what they're entitled to as part of their compensation. Now, the next level of compliance really comes from a supervisory perspective, and the tools that we have available. And the Team tab at the top here allows me as a supervisor to monitor. Monitoring is part of compliance, ensuring that users are entering their time, ensuring that the timesheets are being entered accurately and submitted in a timely fashion. All of that is accomplished here from the Team tab. Okay? The Team tab gives me as a supervisor access to the approvals that are waiting for me. So these are timesheets and time off that have been submitted to me. Replicon is going to help facilitate that workflow with an email notification to approvers so that they know when there is time and time off waiting for them. And that's an important part of compliance. A system that is enforcing but not communicating compliance is one thing. But Replicon is going to actually communicate, where things are at in the workflow, what needs to be addressed. It's going to tell us how many overtime hours a user has and allow us to drill down and look at Scott Coleman's timesheet by clicking his name. From here, I'm again able to communicate back to a user, rejecting the timesheet potentially based on, your overtime policy or their lack of compliance with a work legislation. So the system is going to allow for all of that in an automated fashion so that you do not have to do the legwork. It's going to bring that information to you as a supervisor, and it even gives you insight into those timesheets, those time off requests that have not been submitted. So a lot of systems will give you access to that data once it goes through the workflow to you, but Replicon exposes that data real time. So the second an employee starts filling in their time card, you're able to see those entries here for any period today in the past. Okay. Now the time off is also going to give you insight to your team's time off request because this is a shared calendar. I'm seeing all the people that report to me, so I can avoid conflicts. I can make judgments and determinations about their time off requests based on the other staffing levels that I have. And you'll notice down here at the bottom that information feeds directly to a calendar application of my choosing. That may be Outlook, it may be a web-based calendar from Google or Hotmail. But the calendar feed here allows that to update real time, so you don't have to come into the Replicon tool every time you want to see that information. Okay. Now, once we have a system that's ensuring compliance across the time and time off elements, we need to get that data out. And the Payroll tab at the top is going to provide a single stop for payroll admins to come in and do a couple of things. One is maintain that highest level of administration. So supervisors from the team tab that we were on can see their team. Payroll will allow payroll administrators to see the organization at a very high level. They'll be able to drill down and address concerns. Maybe a supervisor isn't being compliant and submitting and approving timesheets. Maybe a user's timesheet slipped through the cracks and something needs to be addressed on it. Payroll tab gives the payroll admins a dashboard to do that and accomplish all of their tasks. They can see all the timesheets. They can quickly filter for overdue versus unsubmitted across the organization. They can look at specific departments or groups that you've set up. Same applies to time off as well as global balances from this screen. So every user in the system, based on the permissions and groups that we set up within the organization, will have their own time off balances. And here I can see on one screen everybody's balance real time and drill down into that if I want more information about Scott's balances, for example. All of this data setting within Replicon is really only solving half of the problem. We need to do something with that data, and that's going to come out in one of two ways. It's going to come out through the export tab here. So as a payroll person, I want to upload to a payroll provider such as ADP or Ceridian or Paychex. The export tab allows the payroll admins to go in, see the data before it's exported and validate what it is they're exporting. And the other place that we're going to see that data leave the system is through reporting. Okay. Right now in your payroll system or other systems that you interact with on a regular basis, you are likely tied to specific reports. You don't like the way that report looks, or you need to change that report in some way, you have to make a call to IT, or you need to take it out to Excel and manually adjust it. Replicon has given you, the user, all of the controls with regards to that. We're happy to help you. 24/7 support means you can call us at any time, and we're happy to walk you through that process and help facilitate a change. But we don't want to be the bottleneck. If you have the wherewithal and the knowledge that you need to do this yourself, we want to empower you to do that. So our reporting within our product is going to help facilitate that. The timesheet reports that I bring up here again, these are just defaults. Within the system, you can create any number of reports that you want. There's no limits. But if I go in and look at the pay code details report, for example, this is something that a payroll admin might want to run for a given period. I'm looking at all users for the current timesheet period. It's going to show me all of the different pay codes that are logged, the total hours for the user in that period, etc. And this information may be great. We have years of experience and we've developed these reports based on what we're hearing. But we recognize the fact that you may want to change these, and that's going to be done here. None of these reports are static. So the settings lets you go in, it lets you move columns around in the report, lets you remove some information there. You can add any column you want just by typing in the, let's say, email address. There it is. I can type in the user's email address. I can have their supervisor's email address in there as well. I can also group by different options. There's no limit to the number of fields that you add to the report or the configuration. Okay. Any changes I make are available real time. So I can see now I've added that email address, and if I wanted to, I could change other elements of this report as well. I can save this report so I can run it anytime I want. It could come in and it'll all be saved in this format. I can schedule it. So all the reporting in this can be scheduled to ensure that your supervisors are being compliant. You're getting notified automatically with this reporting. And of course, if there's some graphical representations you'd like to undertake, we will go to Excel so that you can run a chart wizard there with a few clicks and produce that graphical data. So just to review what we've covered off today, when we're talking about compliance, we want to start with the end user experience. That end user experience needs to be efficient, and it needs to be friendly, and it needs to be flexible. Okay? All of those elements are going to lend themselves to adoption. Without adoption, compliance is zero. regardless of the system that you're using. Okay. The capture of time off and the enforcement of policies is the other thing that we saw from an end user's perspective, understanding what they have access to book off, the automatic calculation of overtime, enforcing legislated overtime rules per state or per county. Okay, so the system's automating that process. You want an automated system to enforce that. You don't want to have to use manual intervention. Then we saw supervisors' ability to ensure compliance and to help that compliance process by seeing data not only once it's been submitted but before. And then last but not least, we touched on getting the data out of the system through reporting, through payroll, which is monitoring compliance, making sure that things are flowing through the business flow as intended. Okay. Now I'm sure there's some questions, so I want to take pause here, and before I do that, I want to point out that from a user experience perspective, we also talked about how friendly that interface needs to be. Mobility is a huge piece of that. So the time off and the timesheet and the approvals that I've done here through the web interface is also available through a mobile application in the case of Replicon. Now, with that, Armando, I think I'll pass back to you. I'm sure there's some questions there. I see a little flag telling me there's some waiting for me, so I'll let you get those underway.
Sure, great. Thanks, Scott. Thank you for the really great overview of Replicon, of our product. So yes, we do have some questions, and for those of you on the phone, if you have any other questions, please feel free to submit them in the questions box, and we have a few minutes left here in our time allotted today to go through these. So Scott, we have a question here from Sylvia, and the question is how easy is it to add overtime paid at straight time rate and also double time?
Not a problem. Good question, Sylvia. So here, what you'll notice is we've set up an overtime rule for time and a half and then regular time at a multiplier of 1. But all these multipliers are configurable. So within the application, if I just go to our initial overtime rules setup, what we should see is several pay codes. I'm just going to go into, for example, the California overtime rule. Pre-configured, we can see several pay codes have been set up already. So we've got time and a half, time and a quarter. We've got a regular time and a meal penalty, but these pay codes are all defined by you, Sylvia. So the straight time pay code would be easy to set up and use in place of one of these, even in combination with something like double time for the same calculation.
Okay, great. Thanks, Scott. There's another question. Our company has a separate time off software. Can this product be used without the time off features?
It can, absolutely. So it is a permission-based product. Time and attend has that time off component, but we can remove that element through permissions, and the users wouldn't see it at all. The other thing we could consider is an exchange of data. So because it is available in the time attend solution, maybe we provide a single point of access for users to put their time and time off, and then push this time off to your other system the same way that we're pushing that information to a calendar in the case of Outlook. And not unusual to see that happen to HRIS systems or large ERP systems within an organization.
Okay, great. We have another question here. It says, does the system track international holidays as well?
It does, and that's a good point. I didn't touch on that, but from a compliance perspective, you want to ensure that holidays are being paid accordingly, etc. That's all defined through holiday calendars that you can set up within the system, and we can set up multiple holiday calendars. If I go to the holiday calendar section in my company setup, you'll see that you can define country holidays or subsets of that. There may be different U.S. Calendars in your organization. You can set up as many as you need to. Then what that does is it reflects in the system a holiday day. So Monday is a holiday in both the United States and Canada. So you can see that this holiday has been auto-populated with 8 hours, so that helps ensure compliance there by auto-populating the hours if you want to. And it highlights it, so it's shaded gray because it is a holiday day on the calendar.
Okay, great. And another question here is, we need timesheet approvals from multiple approvers. Is that possible even if the employee does not directly report to someone?
It absolutely is. So what Replicon is going to allow us to do is set up an approval path, and oftentimes what you'll have is the user's supervisor is obviously one person in that approval path, but then you may have one or more people outside of that are not the direct supervisor of the employee, and you can define that path. So it may be supervisor and then one or another user, or it may be users before supervisor. You set up that path, and that's reflected here for the user. So in this case, I just have Greg Kelly, but I can have more than one user approving my timesheet within the system.
Okay, great. And we have a question here, two actually from Rich. One is, does all data reside in the continental U.S.? And then there's a follow-up, another question after that. So go into you. And then the other one is, does the system accept a variety of time entry devices?
Certainly. So the system, all system data resides in a couple of places. So one, it resides in our data center in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So it does reside in North America. Depending on the information that you're tracking, Rick, that may or may not work for you specifically, and there may be options over and above that. We can talk about offline. To respond to your second, the second place it resides is in the continental U.S. in the Amazon cloud. Amazon serves as our hot backup site. In the event of a failure, we would cut over to a U.S. based installation. To address your device question, Replicon does provide a collection device, the Cloud Clock, to help with compliance. But that Cloud Clock is not by any means the only way. We do have an open interface. So the same way that Cloud Clock, that tablet-based punch device, is sending information to Replicon, we can leverage other hardware that you may have already purchased or looking to purchase that have additional elements that you're wanting to leverage. So very open when it comes to hardware solutions.
Right, and then we also have the option of having a mobile application that users can just download from the iTunes Store if that's something that the company wants to implement. That's another mechanism that's available. Okay, I think we have time for one more question here. What if an employee, going back a little bit to the holiday question, what if an employee works on the holiday?
Not a problem. The fact that it's shaded and indicated as a holiday and even auto-populated as a holiday doesn't prevent us from entering time on it. So as you'll notice, I can still do a time entry on that day. And again, that's permission-based. You can set up validation to prevent it or allow it, depending on the user or group within the organization. That can be treated the same as other time in the system, or can receive special treatment when it comes to calculating overtime for hours entered on that day.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Scott, and thanks, everyone. I think that's all that time that we have left for today. I'd like to thank everyone for joining. If you have any more questions, feel free to contact us to learn more about Replicon, or have more detailed questions about the product at info@replicon.com. And once again, thank you, Scott, for a great product overview, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. Hope everybody has a great day. Signing off.